Hey all, today I'm going to show you something that I use in my classroom a lot. I've used it as a project, but also just as a skill building and as a practice for students. And it's inspired by what I see out my classroom window, which is some trees. Now, you could do these trees at any time of the year, any colors of foliage. You could do them bare if you wanted to. I chose fall because those are some kind of fun colors. So before we get into the project, I want to talk about sort of a progression that I see in my classroom with kids drawing trees. So a lot of times when we're learning how to draw trees, we see a trunk, and then we see sort of a cloud shape on top, and looks a little bit like broccoli. Now, totally valid when we are learning how to draw trees. This is an obvious step to drawing trees. What we want to get to is thinking about trees more organically and how they grow. So as we progress, we want to think about drawing at least like a deciduous tree, more like a Y shape, like this. And then we're going to taper these branches, and they're going to come in, and then they go up. And remember, trees are organically shaped. They're not going to be symmetrical. So then I'm doing kind of like a crazy hand. So thinking about fingers. And sometimes I've described it that way to students, and that's really helpful for them. And it doesn't matter if it looks kind of wonky and crazy at this point. Okay, so then each of those fingers has fingers. Each of the branches has branches. And we're kind of letting that pencil sort of roll a little bit. We're just letting it kind of go naturally. And so I just keep adding. So when I'm teaching students how to draw trees, this type of tree, this is kind of the path that I take. So you can already see that it's looking a little bit more natural. Now, when students are learning this, especially in the younger grades, you'll see them maybe do something like this, and then this. It takes a little bit of time and practice for them to get this idea where the branches are coming out, but this is how they start adding the branches. And so we're going from here, broccoli, to this, to this. So expect to see that a little bit in your classroom. Okay, so we're just going to focus on some up close drawing today. So I've got a tree branch here, and because what I see out my window is not the full tree, I'm just drawing parts of the trees, and I'm drawing them overlapping. And you might notice on this drawing that the tree in front is a little bit darker. The tree behind it is a little bit lighter, and then this lightest one. And this is a way that you can introduce, especially to more experienced students, the idea of depth, that things in the background are going to recede and things in the foreground are going to come forward. You'll also notice that the leaves on this tree are a little bit darker, and these are a little bit more washed out. Okay, so what we're going to do, same concept that I showed for that big tree, we're going to just bring our line up and another one, and it comes out like this. And then we're going to do branch from thick to thin. We'll do another one in here and another one here, and then maybe another one here. And I'm going to go kind of fast, and it doesn't matter that I have done that too thick. We can always go back here. And then each of these is going to get a branch, and more branches and more branches. So I'm adding, and then I'm going to shade in. So I'm going to shade these all in. Now I would obviously add more branches as I go, but the idea is that we're filling that in. Okay, you can use a regular pencil for this. You can use some colored pencils for this, but the idea is that we want to get them to draw a branch. So For beginning students, maybe just start with one sort of skinny tree and just focus on the upper branches, not the ground, not anything behind it. Okay? All right. Now, for the painting aspect of it, for the leaves, a lot of times when we're working in a classroom, we're going to be using classroom materials. So I'm just going to be using a student set of watercolors. I have a decent brush. Most student classroom brushes look like this. If you don't have access to brushes, you can use a Q-tip, and I'll show you how to work with that. And for paper, if you don't have watercolor paper, especially if you're using this just for a practice, just regular paper, mixed media paper, or even cardstock is great. Okay, so then when I go to talk to the kids about painting, we're going to be doing sort of this impressionistic effect here. So I'm going to start with getting some paint, and I'm going to start with a lighter color, and I'm going to use the lid of the paint tray. A lot of times students want to mix colors directly on the palette, and that can really be problematic for like mixing up and messing up your paint palettes. The other thing is that you want to remind kids not to use paint straight from the palette. In nature, we have multiple tones. A lot of colors in nature don't come straight from a paint palette, so mixing them is a really good idea to get a more natural look. Okay, so then I've got my round tapered brush, and I'm just dabbing little dots for the leaves. And I'm going to start on one branch, and then I'm going to kind of move around. I'm not doing the whole branch one color. I'm going to move my brush around kind of randomly so that I'm just tapping. I'm not doing this motion. I'm just tapping the brush. And you can see that as the paint starts to dry, we get some sort of lighter and darker effects. Okay. All right. So I've got my first layer in here. If you have students that paint with a lot of water and paint really wet, tell them to give it a second or two to dry in between. Another thing to remind students of is that we want to paint in threes. So painting in threes, meaning that you have a light color, a medium color, and a dark color. And that'll give a lot more depth to your painting and a little bit more interest. Okay, so I'm going in with a darker color here, and I'm doing it kind of right over the top of some of those areas. That's going to give a nice blend. And as you can see, this goes pretty quickly. Sometimes students are like, oh my gosh, we have to paint every single one of those leaves individually. It goes super fast. Okay, so I've got my medium tone in here. I do want to show you if you're painting with Q-tips, if that's all you have access to. Here, let me do a little bit darker color so you can see. Works pretty similarly. So if that's what you have, or if you don't have a lot of time in between to do cleanup, Q-tips are a way to sort of get around some of that cleanup. All right, and then I'm going to go in with a little bit of red. And again, I'm using the paint tray to blend my colors. The nice thing about using the paint tray, the lid to paint or to mix your colors, is that you can kind of get an idea about what it's going to look like on the paper before you stick it on there. Okay, so I'm going to dab, keep dabbing, just the tip of my brush. I'm not doing any brush strokes. And I'm going to layer on top. And I could add more or less if I wanted to. If I were doing the whole tree, I could think about maybe having some leaves falling down off of it as a nice effect. But really, we're just looking at creating a study, a practice for them. It does make a really nice project that you can use. So there we are. Think about experimenting with greens, with maybe if you wanted to do something spring-like, some cherry blossoms or plum blossoms. But that is a practice that I use in my classroom a lot. Kids seem to enjoy it, and it's a great skill builder. Okay, have fun.